Hello everyone and welcome to Festival of Women Now 2020, a 3-week festival, interdisciplinary festival that celebrates and amplifies the work of women creatives, change makers and thought leaders. In general, it's about women championing the works of other women. And this year, we're bringing Now 2020 in a digital format and brought to you free. Because of that, I'm appealing to you to consider donating to TCare. Your contributions will go a long way in supporting Now and his endeavors, and most importantly, in supporting the creatives, freelance collaborators that help to make Now possible. And what is TCare? TCare is established by T-Works. It's a fundraising initiative that supports projects led by women that makes the borders between art and life more porous. And not only that, it supports these projects that make an impact in society. This year, TCare supports 7 projects, and they are the Kodet Project, led by Nurul Jihada Hussein, Keeping Hope Alive, led by Fionn Phua, Project X, with Vanessa Ho, Sherry Shakisha, and Wani, It's Raining Raincoats, led by Deepa Swaminathan, Project Julia Street, co-founded by Eva Limson, 3 Pumpkins, led by Lin Shiyun, and of course, Now, helmed by myself. If you are in a position to give, do consider contributing to TCare. Your contributions will be divided equally and shared between these 7 projects. Thank you very much. For more information on TCare, you can click onto giving.sg and search for TCare, or visit the Now website at notordinarywork.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the post-show conversation with the creatives, the cast and the creatives of the Book of Mothers. You probably have just heard, you've completed listening to the audio play, The Book of Mothers, written by Eleanor Tan and directed by Edith Podesta, with sound design by Chua. And tonight we will have them back with us live to talk about the process, along with 2 actors, Koh Wan Ching as Louise, and Louise, and Karen Tan as Linda. I must say that I'm still overwhelmed by the whole process of just sitting there listening to them. I've heard this, once before while we were putting it together, but I think hearing it live and with all the sonicscape that Inch put together, it's quite moving and it's palpable and powerful. For you out there watching us, I invite you to write in your comments on the Facebook page or the YouTube page, whichever that you're watching this at, as also your questions, because we'll be taking them and your thoughts, reflections after the work. And we can share them online now and also on this program, and we'll chat more about it. So with that, I'll invite the 3 creatives first, with Eleanor, Edith, and Inch. Welcome them onto screen.
Hello.
Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How was that for all of you? It must have been like first time for you, Eleanor. Was that the first time to listen to it?
Yes, it was. And I was really anxious too. And I did, Edith very kindly shared some of the rehearsal recordings with me. And of course, I did come in just to sit in for a little bit during the recording process. But I don't think anything could have prepared me for what I just heard. It was amazing to finally hear it. And thank you so much, Inge, for what you brought, like things that I couldn't even imagine. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Edith. And thank you for that's really good.
Now, I think I shall begin talk about the creation process, the process of putting this together, starting with Eleanor. What was the writing process? I know that when I first read it, it was in 2019. And perhaps you can begin with the inspiration behind this piece. Why did you begin this work, and why did you start with this journey, the Book of Mothers?
Well, the first part I wrote of this script years and years ago was actually, I don't know, I was in my early 20s, I think, and just thinking about the whole idea of motherhood. And that was before I became a mother myself. And I think over the years, there were bits that wound up in the script that kind of occurred to me. But I think obviously the experience of being a mother, raising a child, of also dealing with the idea that my own mother was aging and I was also having to care for her. I mean, all those things kind of crystallized it. And so I first started writing the script back in 2018, I think. And it was part of the TheatreWorks playwriting masterclass that I attended with Tony Perez. And so the first 20 pages, which I wrote, were at that workshop. And those were the 20 pages that you read, and which I had no idea were even going to be considered for anything. And then suddenly you approached me and I was like, oh, now I have to finish it. And so the process of birthing the next 40 pages was a trial by fire, but it was so, it was the kick in the pants I needed. And of course the process that we went through to have the first staged read last year. I mean, there were two reads. One was for sort of an invited crowd of theatre peers, and then another one was for the public. And that process was also really important in terms of getting me to be honest with myself and look at the script and go like, okay, this is funny, that doesn't belong, and like, I like this very much, but it didn't work very well. So like, I can't be precious about this, and I need to, do what serves the work best. And I also have to give a shout out to just the cast and director of the first read last year, who were just amazing in terms of helping me to kind of put everything together. There are a couple of scenes that they helped me workshop, and there are words that literally flew out of their mouths straight onto the page. So I really have to thank them for this as well.
And those who contributed in the first read in 2019, directed by Yo Yen Yen. Yes. And there was Jo Tan as Louise, and
yes,
I believe was it
Deborah Ting as Linda?
Yes, and Dwayne. Yes.
No, it was Joshua as Matt.
Yeah, Joshua. I keep calling him Dwayne. I have no idea why my mind is stuck on the Dwayne, even though I know who
Joshua
I'm talking about. Yes, Joshua
and Edward
as
the friend Sean.
Yeah. Yes, and that there was also Isabel Kiam, right? Isabel
Chiam. And also Jasmine.
And
That's
Jasmine,
the two friends.
yes, Jasmine Share. Yes, the two friends. And that was the period of time. And that's when I saw the development, and I knew that, we could actually move forward to finding a way to even push it further for staging because of that, of the determination that you showed, in going through from 20 pages. I think it ballooned about 63 pages, and over 2 months, and I knew that, that there is something here, because there's something that you wish to tell deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's when, then for this following year, I felt that it was necessary for us to try to move it forward. And hence I invited Edith. Yes, Edith, thank you so much for saying yes when I offered you the script. What was your thought, when I offered you that first draft after the 2019 reading? What drew you to it, and what drew you to say yes to us?
I always love Now Not Ordinary Work, the festival. I believe wholeheartedly in what it's about. And I especially loved working with Eleanor on this piece initially before I got to work with Inch. So Eleanor was like my first love, and then Inch became my second love, which is, we live together quite well. So I was especially struck by the female relationships in it, the mother, Linda, and Louise, the daughter, because a lot of the things that Linda speaks about, who is played by Karen Tan, is something that my mother amplified for me. She led by example. She was my book of mothers. And I think that's what really drew me to the script, was that the book of mothers is not something that you read in a book. It's something that you read on the skin of your mother, in her voice, in her subtext, what she's saying between the lines and how she lives her life. So I think our first example of what a woman is our mother. And, so I would say, even though my mother would say she is not a feminist, I would say that my mother is the first feminist that I knew.
Oh, yes. I truly support that. I must say that I think I was very drawn to Eleanor's work. And this was a reminder today, or was it today or yesterday, when I think Center 42 put a reminder about Recalling Mother, a piece of work that I did with Claire Wong some years back. And then in that same posting, wrote about the Book of Mothers. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, actually I'm intuitively drawn to your work, Eleanor, because I've been investigating this voice of the mother, especially since 2009, without even thinking very much. And Edith is very right to say we bring our own personal investigations and our own personal reflections and memory of the relationship we have with the first woman in our life. The first woman that we encounter, knowing everything about the world from that day till now. That woman, if she's still alive, still becomes a very important being and woman, and all the rest of the roles that she brings forth. And as we get older, we see that more clearly now. I think as a child, I looked at my mother only as a mother. Much later, I see her now as who she is, her name, her history, her background, her personhood. Yeah, thank you for that reminder as well, Edith. Moving to Inge. So you came on board because we've had to move it from a live staging to a audio play. And that's where the orality concept and the orality week came about, because everything had to be sonic in order for us to move it from the live to the virtual. What were your thoughts? But how did you encounter the piece? Oh, just simple 3 words. I love it.
Yeah. Only because, prior to even this situation, I'm a huge radio play sort of gal. I love listening to the old BBC ones, even the Chinese radio ones while growing up, like the storytelling and the comedy from there as well. And podcasting. So that's my jam. And it was something that I was always trying to advocate, like, guys, we need to do this more. But then now it's kind of like, yay, now everybody has to do it. So I'm very excited.
So what were some of the, and this goes back to Edith and Inge, what were some of the decisions both of you had to make? Because Edith said you work with Inge very closely because of the way that we now have to stage it digitally and using so much of the audio. So maybe Inge or Edith can begin telling us, what were some of the decisions that you made in the transition between live to audio? Edith?
I think Inch brought up something that I held very dearly through the whole piece, and I don't know when she brought it up, but I think it was very early. Like, who do we follow in this piece? Just as you would when you're looking at a film script. And so we decided it was Louise, and Inch very beautifully orally put us sitting beside Louise the whole play. So you can tell in some scenes that there is a difference between the sound quality that we get from Louise, because we're standing right by her as she makes an upside down pineapple cake, or she's talking to, her husband over the phone. And so I really love that intimacy of following one character the whole way. And I also love the voice that Inge brought to the piece, her singing, the way that she plays the tones, the oboe sound, the soundtracking is amazing. And I just love being in the recording studio with her as well, not just conversing with her as a creative, but also watching her, really inhabit the space and make it so welcoming for the actors, and her opinions, and, the way that she chose what she chose to focus on during the piece was amazing. So I loved working with her. It was the first time I've ever worked with Inch, and I'd love to work with her again.
Thank you.
Aw.
Yes, yes. Me too. I actually have got more ideas already. That's why I was texting Inch throughout the whole audio thing. So, oh, do you know that is this the first time? Oh, then I have several other ideas. Indeed, I think
Yay.
that's the joy of doing this during this period of circuit breaker. Because when I was forced with the notion of the circuit breaker and may not be able to have a connection with a live audience, but yet not wanting to lose the opportunity of still doing the arts or working with the arts or bringing things to life and creating as artists do. And hence the three of you came on board so happily and gamely just to move things forward. And I really, really appreciate that energy. And talking about energy, we cannot forget that we also have performers who lent their beautiful voices and performing the characters so beautifully. And we have two of them, Koh Wan Ching and Karen Tan, to join us along with us on screen. May we welcome them together here. Yes, hello, Karen and Wan Ching. Hello. Thank
I
you
feel like I'm
so
on
much.
CNN.
Is it because of my soothing voice?
Yeah, no, and also it's all this like, well, I'm reporting from my study and like that.
How now I ask the same questions to you, Karen and Wan Ching. That was the first time for you to listen to the whole track, right? The whole audio play from start to end. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about it? Wan Ching?
I was wondering how people were going to listen to it, because it's been a long time since I've had this experience of just listening to something. Yeah, so I was wondering, are people walking about doing their chores and just taking it in, or did they take some time to just be quiet in a room and listen? Yeah, so I was actually quite curious about that. I couldn't stay still, to be honest. I was like uttering about doing
Actually, we
a
can
number.
ask the people. That's a good question. Let's ask those who
Yeah.
are listening. How did you listen? Did you sit? Okay, we have a comment here from Lily, because Lily Chung's comment is quite long, so I can't bring it onto screen, but I can find it. And she said that she listened to it with her eyes closed. And in doing so, it reminded her of there it is, Lily. It says that she listened to it with eyes closed, so it reminds her of the drama on radio with parents. I especially like the conversations between the grandma and granddaughter. Deep, and there are other people. Stephanie Lowe, I think I was cooking while listening. So that's Stephanie. That's on Facebook. Someone's writing there. Stephanie says, I think I was cooking while listening. And then Ghazali Muzakir says, I was really watching the
Kasali.
screensaver and listening to it. So he's watching the wave and he's meditating with the wave as he's listening to that. So
Right.
the wave worked very well. Thank you very much, Alex, for creating the wave. I'd given Alex, who does most of our video for what you see, the intermissions and all the interlude. I just gave her this idea of a wave, a sound. Actually, I thought of a sound wave, but she did one better. She gave me water wave, the blue wave. So yes, some people, the water was somehow meditative. This is what Ghazali said that. And Day, who herself is acting as the nurse in the show, she said she was doing her nails as she was and then her heart broke midway, so she had to stop. Not the nails broke, her heart broke midway, so she had to stop to be still her heart for a moment as she was painting. Thank you very much for those comments. And Faye Lim says, I sat still while listening with two friends. I sat still, and she earlier had also said she's still processing it, because there was a whirling of emotions, swirling of emotions as the play ended, and she's lost for words. And that was something that Faye had written early, immediately after the audio play ended. So thank you very much for all those texts. So, Karen, about you, what were you doing? She said she potted about. What about you?
I had some dinner, and then the mouse had to be charged, so I couldn't do anything. So I had to literally sit and listen as well. And it's when Nolina called me and said, this play can't go on live, we'll have to do a radio play. I was like, I was really excited as well because I always joke around that we should do more radio plays. But this is from an actor's point of view where we rely so much on lights and sound and everything on stage, especially, right? Especially the mic. And I always say to myself, well, okay, if for some reason the lights die, the sound dies, everything, you only have yourself and the voice and the story that you're telling. So in many ways, that's what a radio play is like. It really is just your voice and then somebody behind being a horse, right? Or whatever. But I mean, the story becomes the most important and your voice becomes the most important and all that. And it's really the most basic kind of storytelling. And so listening to it, it was so different. I mean, it really showed me a kind of a journey for Eleanor as the writer because it's all in her head first, then it comes out onto the screen and then she own self read and you own self cry, right? Then you own self like whatever. I mean, I can imagine, right? That's how you do it. Then you
It's
print
true,
it
it's
out,
true.
somebody reads it and then somebody performs it. But this is a different kind of performance. So that's our next
Yeah.
aim, right? To put it on stage. But then it becomes something else. And so the words just like really started to live so much more just listening to it. So it was really, really nice. Really, really very nice, I thought. And the
Yeah.
soundscape was very nice, very
Yes,
nice.
Inch, you did sumptuously. I must say the soundscape was sumptuous to a hilt. And listening to it, there were moments when, for me, I closed my eyes too, because I needed to hear the heartbeat. I mean, I'm telling people how I interpret it. I felt there was a heartbeat, never mind if there isn't any heartbeat. And I just felt that there was a heartbeat. So I was listening to it. And I actually, I wasn't listening on my headphones this time. I just listened it out loud, and it encapsulated my living room. I wanted to hear how it would sound like loud, like the olden days when I had the radio on and I was listening to Sandewara and Bangsawan on radio. And my mother was listening to that in the afternoons. And whether I liked it or not, it is blaring. So as a child, you have no other channels, but you listen to what your parents listen to. So I grew up with the radio, the Sandewara and the Bangsawan, because my mother listened to them. And they were really loud. I think neighbors heard them too. And then, of course, my Chinese neighbor would have Rediffusion, and they would have Cantonese drama on. Then I listened to that as well without really knowing what's about, but you could hear the language. So all the kampong houses had some kind of radio, and at different times there'll be a different form of drama that comes on. So yes, in some ways this reminded me of that. There was a question out there from the crowd and from the Facebook and as well as YouTube. But one question asked, how do you actors immerse yourself in your character? Because the character, I suppose, is very intimate, right? It's about a woman with a relationship with a mother, and a difficult relationship at that. And at the same time, it's about birthing and making choices, giving birth. They're very deep, deep reserves of emotions in these two characters. How do you, Wan Ching, prepare to be Louise?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about my friends around my age who have children, who maybe had careers before they had children and then they had to stop for a while, and then went back to work after they had kids, and who are really, grabbing their kids by the hair. And then I thought about these women and how they must be feeling now in this moment in time, where at the start of the year they have maybe plans ahead of them, certain things that they want to do, but then all these decisions, all these choices and priorities suddenly changes for everyone. Yeah, because of the extreme situation that we are in. Yeah. So I was thinking a lot about these women, these mothers, and so this was a kind of my tribute to them a little bit. Yeah.
And Karen, how about you saying that mother?
Now I'm
You
really
yourself,
for the
you
yeah
yourself
past 20 years already. Every other role is a mother.
Yes, but this is
Husband is
it's
the
a kind
father
of
of
mother
crying
that
out
didn't
loud.
care for her children. No, well, it's assumed that she didn't care for the children, right? For a
Yeah,
child.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not
I
really that
think
she didn't. Yeah.
though you can play a mother over and over again. Actually, I was for those of you who don't know, Nolina sent us all these essay questions. Sorry, I think.
I did
What am I going to
not.
say?
Hayo, Karen.
But you know, the irony is that okay, so my mother grew up during the war, okay, and many of us have mothers who grew up during the war. And what what Linda did as a mother and a wife would not have come as any surprise to somebody in my mother's generation. That's what you did. Because when you grow up post-war, the mortality rate of your of everyone was actually very high. So chances are many women lost their husbands. They died. They had a stroke. They had a heart attack. They left the country to go and work somewhere else. And right, so the mother literally has to go out and earn a living so that her children can survive. And in many ways, that's what Linda did. And I kind of realized that in some ways, perhaps, it is the irony of education. And it's a double
Yes.
irony because this is an education that Linda wanted to give to Louise. But through this education, Louise started to realize, hang on a minute, there's an ideal kind of mother around this world swirling around, either in the Book of Mothers or in the Book of Parenting that she's read, or Enid Blyton or whatever. And why isn't my mother like this, right? But actually, the mother was doing exactly what she is supposed to do. Her husband is ill and cannot support the family. There is a company that can be ruined, and her child will be hungry. And it doesn't matter even that Louise knows it. So I got back to the script again and again, and never does Louise ever say, I wish you did different. Louise is upset for many reasons, but she cannot actually articulate to say, I wish you didn't go out to work, because she knows that's not the right answer. Neither can she say, I wanted you to stay at home, So there's always this kind of problems that we have with our mother, no matter how perfect our mother can really be. We sort of go, yeah, well, you could have been better. You could have cooked more soup, you could have made me dresses or whatever, right? We're always picking on our mothers like that. So I'm not saying that Linda was perfect, but she did what she had to do. But funnily enough for us, I mean, like for Edith and myself and Eleanor and all that, because of the world that has opened up for us, we judge our mothers a lot more. We're a lot harsher. We can be a lot harsher on our mothers because somehow, our education has allowed us to do this.
Yes.
But yeah.
And that's why I was very, the script asked for a child. And the child didn't have, I don't think there was a specific gender to the child in the early reads and the early drafts. So I welcome Edith's choice. Edith, tell us a little bit more about the intergenerationality. That's a long one. It's about deciding that the child is a female.
It wasn't my final choice. I mean, it was Eleanor to make the final choice, but
Okay.
for me, I did really adore this idea of a mother teaching a child intergenerationally and having the three women there and three different ways of looking at the world. I mean, women have worked and given their children to their auntie or to someone else to look after if they need to work. Women have always worked. And I think this other idea of what a mother should be, most of those stories are written by men. This Disney ideal of what a woman should be or what a mother should be are written by privileged men. So I think for me, I really adored the grandmother, talking to the mother who is talking to the grandchild. Maybe it's also very personal for me because when I visit my grandmother in a nursing home with my mother, I really do see, oh, this is where I'm headed. This is where I'm going. This is what we share. I'm going to be, cross my fingers, knock on wood, maybe 94 one day, sitting in a nursing home, unfortunately, I don't have children. I don't plan on having children, so I won't have a child come and visit me. But that was interesting also to think about who are our children, how do we caregive, etc., etc. So the final choice of the child being a woman was Eleanor's choice, and something that we spoke about. I mean, I would like to hear from Eleanor about that as well. Why she felt it was okay rather than Isaac to have Isa.
Yes, I
Um,
really want to hear that. Eleanor, what are your thoughts on that? That was a surprise for me, because I've seen that previous iteration.
yes. So the first draft, yes, it was a son, and played by Jordan
Oh,
Gunn, who was actually one of my students at the time. And he actually was responsible for kind of workshopping a couple of lines that have interesting. I think one of the reasons I originally chose to have the child be a boy was because it was important to me, even though this is very much a women's tale, I wanted the voice of the men to be authentic. And so I did invest quite a lot of effort in sort of listening and researching and thinking about the scenes with the male characters, because I wanted it to be, in that sense, fair. I didn't want at any point to give anyone the excuse of like, oh, it's just a woman on the soapbox shouting about men's things. But I wanted to try to tell the story, from sort of different perspectives. But at the same time, when because Edith mentioned the idea of 3 generations of females more than once, and then finally when she was selling it to me, she was like, I think it's so powerful to have these 3 generations of females, and what actually is being passed on. What are the things that remain the same for all 3 of them, but at the same time, they provide this amazing, multifaceted view of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a girl. And that, obviously, for me, as a woman, as the mother of, a young woman, that spoke to me very powerfully. So I couldn't say no, and I said yes with great joy, and sort of set about making those changes. So yes, it was an easy yes.
yes. And there is a question out here. Mothers are selfish, and this is from Fei Lim. Mothers are selfish and confused. That line in the play broke her. Yes, we are. And she's a mother, quite clearly with this sentence, among other things. And some of us are artists and parents at the same time too. And artists are sometimes thought of or talked about as being selfish or non-essential, and parents are talked about as essential, as caregivers, nurturers. Now, does this team have thoughts or feelings about this coming together of these 2 identities? Because clearly she's asking this because here amongst us are artists who are also parents, Eleanor and Karen. What are your thoughts about that?
Karen, do you want to take this first? You've been at it for longer than I have.
I think okay, it's never going to be there'll be no A1 answer for all these things, right? I mean, because we all know on the one hand, parenting never has those answers. You just parent until literally the day you die. And actually, if you think about it, right, even if your children leave home or if you fight and you disown your child, it doesn't make you a non-parent. You're still a parent. It's just that you don't want your child, right? And at the same time, if I choose to stay as an actor, then I will be an actor for the rest of my life. And I know it is very difficult. But I suppose because I've had to learn to make decisions and all that, I just have to learn to understand that we are always on opposite ends of the spectrum. That when I'm a mother, I'm on one end where I am last, and when I'm an actor, I'm on the other end where I will be first. And it's no different from being a mother and a nurse, a mother and a teacher, because when you're at work, you're at work, and when you're a parent, you're a parent. Very seldom do the 2 become one, unless you are an actor, your child is an actor, and you're in the same production, right? In which case, it's still work. I mean, I'm putting it in as simple a way as possible. Obviously, everyone's experiences are going to be very different. I mean, there are obviously parents with 2 young children, and they are actors or artists, dancers. How do you deal with that? But I honestly believe that we can. And actually, I often feel that the struggle is being a parent more than being whatever work that we're doing. But that's because parenting is just really hard. It's very shitty a lot. Sorry if there are children listening, but it's difficult on one hand, and then being a mother is also. Oh no, I think I'm being.
You're being
On,
laggy.
Yeah, I'm being laggy. Hurry up, Karen Tan, don't lag. Okay, but it's hard to be a mother. It's also hard to be a father, and I think this piece is for fathers as well.
Yes.
I should write this down. Yeah, maybe if I type it, y'all can see.
On the Facebook. So while Karen is typing, maybe Eleanor, would you like to pick up your thoughts about this? Especially about this piece being for fathers as well, isn't it? Because you
Yeah.
talk a lot about the male character, Matt. Because I remember in 2019, when I said, oh, can we maybe, do you think Matt is important? Oh, yes, and you stressed how important he is. And so maybe you talk about why the role of the father is such an important aspect in your play too.
I think so. That's the thing, right? In terms of writing this play, part of the reason why I wrote it is because I was so sick of the role of the father and the mother being so clearly demarcated by gender, right? And that was why I had Linda say those lines. I became the father that your father couldn't be. And why do we have to separate these things? Because ultimately, as a parent, you do what needs doing. For myself, the reason why I've made the choice to continue being an artist while being a mother is because I knew that, with all due respect to mothers who devote all of their time to being mothers, so much love and respect for that, but I knew that wasn't me. And I knew that I would be miserable if that was all I was doing. I knew that if I was able to do what fulfilled me while still doing my best to be a mother, but at the same time doing the work that I felt, made me feel alive, I thought that that would help me be a better wife, friend, mother, you name it, and that there was no way that I could be the best self that I could be to her as a mother without doing these things that make me tick. And especially now that my daughter is 17 and is growing up, and what you said just now spoke to me, like, you are the first woman that your daughter gets to know. And now it's become increasingly important that I'm trying to model the things that I'm trying to teach her. I mean, obviously I fail a lot, but like what Louise says she struggles with, I pick myself up again and I try again because it's always worth it for her. And now it's no longer about, she doesn't need me to change her or whatever anymore. But what she needs from me is for me to be the best version of me that I can be, so that, I don't know, I can play a little part in helping her decide how she wants to, what kind of woman she wants to be. And so in terms of that, in response to your question about the role of the father, I think what's happened is that between my husband and me, we realize that we share the work. And a lot of the time, I wind up doing some of the things that you would expect the father to do, or he does some of the things that you would expect the mother to do. And I think that today, especially when we're talking about equality or we're talking about equal opportunities and all those things, we need to stop kind of making that separation. We need to come together and just go like, okay, you know what? Everyone's different. Every couple does, whether it's a same-sex couple or whatever the situation is that provides the environment for the raising of a child. You do what you need to do, and whatever is right for you is right for you. And I think for me, what Matt said about, because there's so much talk about the mother's instinct, and I wanted to talk about, is there such a thing as a paternal instinct? Does Matt feel that? What does he need even though he's not the one carrying the baby? Who's to say he's not already bonding with that child as well? So I wanted to very much explore that as well and talk about it.
I see. Thank you. And I must say that for Edith's suggestion for the intergenerationality, intergenerational ideas there with a grandmother, mother, and grandchild. And what I liked about that, it also raises the bar of how women teach other women within the household? What are the wisdoms taught, handed down from one generation to another? And how can we break the cycle of sometimes patriarchy? Because women are aware of patriarchy,
Yes.
whether you're schooled and educated or not. And I give you an example of my mother, who's uneducated, as in she was never schooled, she's never went to school. Then one day she saw an ad, and this was just a few years ago. She saw an ad of a woman dressed in a suit, and she was just my mother has dementia, and one day she was quite lucid and she was looking at this photograph, and then she said quite assuredly, "Look at this woman, she's so educated, she no longer has to sell her child, and she no longer has to listen all to her husband all the time." And in that moment when she said that, and she was 90 when she said that, and she had never said any of these statements, these like, "Oh, you must go for an education so that you can stand up for your rights." And at 90 with dementia, when she's lucid, she looked at that photograph and she said, "This woman is educated." And because of that, she can earn her own wages. She no longer has to sell her child, because those days you have many children and you start selling them for adoption, right? And because you're so poor, and then you no longer need to listen to your husband all the time. And just those two statements made me realize that she has always been aware of what it means to be a woman in a man's world, even though she may not have articulated. So I thought that generational stuff, right, Edith? And you were talking about those things too, and you're reading all those other books that impacted your decision in doing the play the way you did. Could you elaborate a little bit more about some of the things you got from it?
I think, for me, directing this piece it's well within my passion. Looking at women around me, looking at how men and women interact, how people interact with the world. That's one of my loves, as well as animals, but that's another topic. But for me, it was also about how to direct a radio play. I think really listening to Inch's work over and over and over again, constantly, discussing and thinking about, oh, what is this choice? What is that choice? I understand that in a radio play there is a real intimacy in having the actors in your inner ear. You don't get to see them. You imagine them as if reading a novel. So if you didn't know who Wan Ching was, if you didn't know who Karen was, you get to really, imagine what these characters are looking like, where they are. Are they, especially when they're in a liminal space where it's shared between the mother and the daughter and the child. Where is that space?
Yes.
And I think listening is a short circuit to emotion. When we listen to a familiar song, when we hear a familiar sound, familiar voice, it's one of the first things a child registers as their mother, not just the heartbeat, but also the mother's voice, and her movement, her sinews. And so that's why I love doing Book of Mothers as a radio play, not just because of the topics, but also the fact that you can really have an intimate relationship with these characters because you are making them as you hear the radio play, travel along. No one is dictating who Matt is to you. No one is dictating what the child looks like. So I really enjoyed that, and bringing that to play in my direction with Inch.
Yes, Inch, elaborate a little bit more the choices you made, especially with the sonic landscape, because it's such a pivotal aspect of it in this audio play.
Well, the intergenerational concept was actually very strong the moment Edith brought it to me. I also kind of had like a visceral sort of gravitation to it because, in my opinion as well, like trauma and all this stuff, you only really see it when you look at it intergenerationally, or the things that you learn, the wisdoms and stuff, like when you pull it out of that timeline. So when it comes to putting that into music, from basic things of trying to figure out a soundscape, like there were a few things that we talked about, which is the perspective of sound. Like, where do we want to be? Who should we be in each time? And to me, that's extremely important in storytelling and the chronological events of that. do we follow the baby? At one point in time, we were exploring like, what if the audience heard the whole entire thing from the baby's perspective the entire time? Like we played with that as well. But then we decided Louise in the end of the day, and as well as like a variety of other things, like what during that liminal space when we were creating that together, she sort of shared like, maybe music, maybe something otherworldly, maybe, or in my mind I was like, how about we put them in a womb? So most of my like labeled tracks were like, this is the wombscape, and then I'm just generally trying to put everybody in a womb sonically. So that's kind of the general ideas that we were playing with. But I have to say, like, I can only work with so much, but the source of the audio was really the actors. And like the way Edith was directing them was extremely special. It was very clear to me that she got what was needed out of like a sort of an audio play, because like when we were actually, I've got a story during when we were doing the recording. Halfway through, Edith was like, I'm not going to look at you guys anymore. Just like, when I look at you, it looks like you nailed it, but actually it's not. Like, I just got to really like not look at you guys the entire time while you're recording. And she's really paying attention to just the audio nuances, because we're so deceived by gestures or the way that someone is emoting with the face or a variety of other things, but we're just looking at oral quality here. So she was very sharp, and like we were just kind of keeping everything as clean as possible in a way that I can eventually manipulate it to as endless possibilities. I think that's the wonderful part about going into sound as well. We have a lot more possibility.
What's the challenge though, as a performer? It was a challenge because we don't have that silence before we say something, or when a touch or a move that actually tells something and before you say your line. So we don't have that. And so for us, I think for myself anyway, it always felt very unnatural, because I feel like I really want to take this one. I just want to take a pause for 2 beats, but you can't, because then your audience will turn to 98.7 already if you want to listen anymore. You know what I mean? You have to. So we have to understand that pausing in a radio play is so different from pausing when you're on stage. And I think it's just switching the mind. And I think this is how we all have to think now. It's just another kind of acting, another kind of directing, where a lot of things that we're used to are just not going to be there, literally, And I think we rehearsed, right, Wan Ching and I, we rehearsed without looking at Edith either. She says, turn off the camera, and we just speak. And then we just had to get used to that as well. So that was actually good, Otherwise, right, I'll be staring at you at the mic all the time. Yeah.
Wan Ching, talk us through the rehearsal process for you, because you appear in almost all of the scenes, and half the time, if Edith says turn off your camera, how was it like for you in the dark, which is so NT?
It was quite hard. The first couple of rehearsals, it was really difficult. And after the rehearsal, you feel very bad, because you like there's a kind of compression. You're just in your room talking to yourself, and you can't like bounce off the energy of your co-actors through touch and just smelling the other person in the room with you. So the first couple of rehearsals were really, really difficult. And also the other thing was like Louise is the mother describes her as very silent. Her friends describe her as quiet. Yeah, so how are you going to put that? How are you going to perform that, right? Because on stage you can use gestures, you can use presence, but you really can't do that with the voice. So then a lot of small things became really important. The breathing, the sort of And Edith, as usual, was very sharp in saying that even though our cameras are turned off, really be listening to what your body is doing. So because we can hear, the audience can hear when you shift your position, when you kind of shift your weight, the kind of state your body is under is going through. Yeah. So that was a very, very important and sharp note for me, that pay attention, listen to the body as well. Then it became more relaxed, and it kind of flowed easier. Yeah. Otherwise the first few was really quite difficult. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah.
There is a question out there from the crowd. It's to do with the Book of Mothers itself, and this is not only to Eleanor, because I would like to open it up to all of you, because for me in the original, when I first did the reading in 2019 with the Book of Mothers, there was so much fewer, and in this version there was so much more. Talk us through, maybe beginning with Eleanor, then maybe Edith, and even for Inch, how you perceive the Book of Mothers sonically, because it's so textual, but then you layer something very sonic to the Book of Mothers as well. Yeah? Maybe Eleanor, begin first about Book of Mothers, your choice in it. Why is it so biblical? And then at the end of it, it didn't sound very biblical, It felt like it began biblical.
Yes. So I was raised by parents who went to a Methodist church, and that was very much, my childhood and my youth. At some point, I even taught Sunday school. So I know my Bible, I know, and so a lot of that familiarity with the text came from my own childhood. But then after the first draft was done, or rather after last year's version was done, I really wanted to expand beyond just just Christianity as a religion. So I did do research into Buddhism and Islam and Hinduism as well. And so added more texts. And this is at the risk of, I don't mean to offend, but this had very much to do with what was said earlier about women and girls knowing that they live in a man's world. Because the source of many of the quotes from the mothers are basically rules for women written by men. These are recorded for generations in cultures where, generally speaking, it was the men who inherited the property. It was the men, who spoke in the churches or in places of worship. And so, yes, it was. And it just seemed, especially when I was starting to go through the experience of the book, it was hilarious and absurd to me, all these assumptions that were coming at me, like, oh, a mother is supposed to be this, and I'm like, who said so? And then you find these things, but then you ask, like, someone who's not been through this experience tell me what it's supposed to be like. So how does a man tell a woman what she's supposed to be if he's never been a woman and he doesn't know what it's like to be a woman? So it's just all of those things. That is not to say, at the same time, that there isn't a great deal of wisdom and insight, valuable traditions in those things as well. So, for example, one of the quotations that took wholesale was the quotation from love, and that was something which is timeless and speaks with such bare-faced truth. I didn't feel that I needed to do anything to it. I just in because it was beautiful. And so, yeah, that's where the practice comes from. It provided for Louise to sort of examining this idea of motherhood for the first time, because she's coming into it and kind of going face first into all these assumptions that everybody has. Her friends have an assumption, the husband has an assumption, his friend has an assumption, the mother has an assumption. But ultimately, the experience is hers to own, and she has to find it for herself. She has to choose to take what she needs from the book she's reading. The rest is just going to have to figure it out herself. Much less you have to. So that's what it's got.
Edith, your thoughts on the Book of Mothers? The book itself, the series of books, yeah.
I think it's necessary. I think it is very necessary as as bookmarks throughout the entire piece, where we get our ideas from and, how this information is handed down. What is the doctrine of mothers? Who tells us what a mother should be? Where do we get those ideas? I think today it's not only in our cultural or our religious families, but also very much our own families, our friends, magazines, etc., etc. I remember learning very early, my mother constantly worrying about her weight and thinking, oh, do I have to do that when I start to become a woman? Will I have to do that? So I really liked the fact that we get to hear the very personal relationship between Louise and Linda, and the bringing of the child into the world. But we also get a societal, bookmarking of where we might get our ideas. What are the 10 commandments of being a mother, and how are these handed down? So that's why I liked listening to the Book of Mothers, although some of it was quite raw. It was very difficult to listen to, some of it.
Yes, some of it's quite frightening as well to think that it's perpetuated. And we still adhere to the books. The books still exist, even though, in the terms of the Book of Mothers, the idea of the Book of Mothers themselves does not exist, but the ideas behind that still exist and were perpetuated. And Inge, your thoughts on how you created the soundscape for them, the choices that you made to support
Well,
each reading with some kind of sound.
I took a lot of cues from the actors' voices, actually. Like, in Wan Ching, her character, like she said, she was meant to be quiet. But each time when she spoke about the Book of Mothers, there was a lot of like there's a tension of restraint, or rather, she wouldn't say this unless she really needed to. So that kind of urgency, quiet urgency, just felt really important to highlight. So it was for me. I tend to like to just hear sounds and respond to them. So it was very hard for me to work until I had the actors' voices in my sessions, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna start sculpting the entire soundscape. And in fact, their voices were the only thing that was giving me a real clear, direct, a very visceral vision on where it should go. And obviously it was later on cleared with Edith, because I do have the tendency to over finesse or overthink a little bit, and then sometimes it's so Edith was like reels me back in. There were so many versions where I sent her and she was like, nope, too much too much. It's in a good way, like I need it, so it was good. Sometimes I like, for example, for Karen, she's like, Karen's character, her mom is so over the top at some points, so it's extremely important to kind of, in my mind, I'm going with it as well. So bombastically, musically, when she speaks about the Book of Mothers, let's go choir, let's go like crazy, like thumping of the book on you, kind of like on the pedestal kind of a thing. And then with like crazy ethereal stuff, like the angels are backing her up, just like everything, just sort of a full artillery ahead. But then sometimes you miss the point. So it was like her voice carried it, and then for me, I was like, her voice carried it. I didn't need to do too much, and then I need to reel back. So it was really a lot of guidance from the voice, and then sculpting from Edith.
So that's why it's really a collaborative process, isn't it? Because we all bring something to the table and each one informs the other. And that's the beauty of creating, because it's such a collaborative process. And I always like that. And speaking of collaboration, here's something from a Jeremy Lim. Thank you for the performance. I don't want to take away from the idea of it being centered around womanhood and the privilege I have as a male listening to this. I do wonder, however, what would a Book of Fathers be like? And so much attached to that with patriarchy and the historical side of having history written by men with the Bible and all. But perhaps to Eleanor or Edith or the cast and the rest of the creative, even for Inge, is even a Book of Fathers necessary? And what would you suggest that the Book of Fathers explore? I think that is a good question. If you were to write a Book of Fathers, what would you offer? Maybe we begin with Wan Ching and then we go down this way. Exam. Since, Karen said I did do the essay, I will be the principal. Wan Ching, your answer,
I'm just going to
please.
say this.
Spring test.
Jeremy, write it, Jeremy.
sorry, Wan Ching.
Go, Jeremy. No, I'm just gonna write it. Yeah.
But what would you suggest to Jeremy if you would be able to write a Book of Fathers? What would you put in there?
I would love to read a Book of Fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, people forget, or maybe they just, I don't think people forget, but like patriarchy, men are just equal victim, not equal, but they are victims of patriarchy as well. You know,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of it that affects them. The inability to be vulnerable. There's so many things about it. Like I want to see some of that actually written. You know, and
Yeah.
actually one of my favorite books that I highly recommend is this is a psychology book by this guy called Terence Real, and it's a book called I Don't Want to Talk About It, and it explores this psychologist himself and his relationship with his father, very fractured relationship with his father. And that so far I think is the closest thing I've ever seen to the Book of Fathers, which has been really, it was so good to just read that book. And I want more men or hear more men's perspective on this, you know? Because their default perspective is they don't want to talk about it.
One of the
I think
most
if we
interesting.
Sorry.
please.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
go.
This is such an exciting part. Both of you want to say at the same time. Maybe Karen, go first.
No,
Please.
no,
Go,
Eleanor, go
Karen.
first. Eleanor, go first.
Oh, okay. Eleanor, go first, please.
Thanks, Karen. I just wanted to say, in terms of the role of fathers, just as women find themselves constrained within, what is often called a man's world, but that man's world isn't any kinder to men. And in many places, like here in Singapore, for example, the system does not favor a father, perhaps playing as much of a role as he could. Because I remember, we used to travel. When I traveled to Scandinavia, and we had this amazing conversation with this young father who just had a baby. He talked about how parental leave there, they're basically given 1.5 years, but how you split that between the mother and the father is entirely up to everyone. And so you can take it equally, or you can give more to one over the other. But whatever that means, it means that many fathers there, young men, have to spend time at home being the primary caregiver for a young child. And just think, what would that be, the context of fatherhood? How much differently would we read the fathers if that was what fatherhood looked like, if that was the type of fatherhood that was familiar to us? And also how would we as women be shaped by our fathers differently if our fathers were present in that way as well? So
Yes.
again, I wouldn't presume to write this, Jeremy or somebody else. Please write it, because I want to watch it and I want to read it. I want to see it. Karen, over to you.
Well, by that same token, because you had mentioned before that so many like so much of the Bible is written by men, right? So many, I've done plays about all women and it's written by men, and you sort of go, you know everything, you know what I mean? So the idea, of course, is that a woman should write a book about the Book of Fathers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's no problem, or a version of it, because after all, if a Book of Mothers is based so much on the Bible, then in the Bible are many stories and situations where men would probably say, no, there's no way I'm going to do that. I will not stone my daughter. I will not throw her out of the house. I will, this is wrong. I disagree with it. And so, of course, a man writing from that perspective also will be very interesting. I think, it's true. I agree with Eleanor. Of course, we all know this, that in Singapore, fathers are not, okay, as it is, mothers have it quite, we are slowly still trying to develop more, fairness for mothers in Singapore.
Yes.
Single mothers and so forth. But it's harder for fathers, I think. I mean, not very long ago, I think I had a nephew who had a baby, and then the confinement woman was there. I called her the confounding woman because, what you do? You look after somebody's baby for 1 month. And, so we're saying, like, oh, why do you let, my nephew, like, bathe the baby and all that? And she gave me this look of, how can? And I'm thinking, yeah, you see, exactly, firstly, we have this idea that when a woman gives birth, she's sick and she's ill, therefore she has to stay in a dark room for 1 month and not look after her baby. And at the same time, we have this idea that the father can't do it, which is completely wrong. And so I think that there is a lot of stuff just for Singaporean men to get into if they were to write a play, about things that men go through in Singapore, because it becomes very universal. What I loved about Eleanor's writing was that it was not very specific to Singapore in that sense. There was very little Singlish, and that kind of thing, and it can travel really well. And I think other women and even men will listen to this and say, yeah, this is exactly what goes on in my family, and it's gone on with my mom and that kind of stuff as well. I think That's the thing, and I think now we've come to a point in life where everything is very universal. There's a great universality about all our experiences right now. But actually sitting down and writing it takes a lot, lah. You know what I mean? And also, if you can't write, don't. Please. Just saying.
Edith, any thoughts to add?
I did
Yeah,
suddenly think about.
there's a book called. Oh no, go Wan Ching, go.
Wan Ching, do you have?
Yeah, I just suddenly thought about this memory of when I was traveling on a hiking trip. So we were staying on a mountain lodge, and there was a father, quite a young father, who was traveling with his daughter, just the two of them on that trip. Yeah, and they would talk deep into the night. The girl is squealing and laughing and giggling and telling her father about everything. So the next day at breakfast at the lodge, I just asked, "Oh, the hello, where are you from?" Stuff like that. And yeah, and the father told me that he tries to do that like every 3 years or every 2 years. Him and the daughter will just go on a trip together. Yeah, on a hiking trip. So I thought that was really, really beautiful. Yeah. Okay, go, Jeremy.
We have Edith.
Yeah.
Edith, want to add
No,
something?
I agree. I think with Wan Ching, go Jeremy, exactly. And I also think that there are a couple of writers or books that you can look at. One is called The Myth of Male Power. It's not the newest book, but it does look at how patriarchy has taken away many freedoms from men. I mean, that's what patriarchy does. It doesn't put women in the place. It also puts men in a kind of place. I mean,
Yes.
Carl Ove, a writer from Norway, speaks about in his 6 books called My Struggle, he talks a lot about his relationship with his father and how he, as a father, relates to his daughters. And he's actually written a whole seasonal book, 4 books, spring, summer, or autumn, etc., which are books to his daughters, from him being a father trying to teach them about the world, from everything to toothpaste to genitals to etc., etc. So it's beautiful to read those books and have a look at the similarities, perhaps, between us as human beings, but also to have a look at how the powers that be conquer by saying that we are so different. We're not, and we all want the freedom to make our choices, and I think ultimately that's what the Book of Mothers is about. So Jeremy, go write your play.
Yes, it is about giving
Well,
all
sorry,
of us choices.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Karen, you want to say
Just
something
wanted to
else?
add, sorry.
Please.
Yeah, because there is also the thing, we always say that a girl's first love is her father. And we always say that the boy always falls in love with his mother, or he marries somebody like his mother. We make these sort of little references. Not always, but certainly in my family, I've got 2 daughters. And they really get on so well with their father in a very different way that they get on with me. You know what I mean? And when a man has a daughter, we would certainly my friends anyway, we would say, "Oh, that's it, you're finished already," because she's going to wrap you around her little finger, and you'll buy. Oh no,
You're stuck.
Oh no.
Oh no, she's stuck.
Why am I always lagging? Yeah,
You
but
can refresh.
Here we go. Oh, I can refresh.
Yes.
How does that happen? I did not click anything.
Yeah, you better not.
I think
don't
you
need
just
to
did.
And this is it of Karen. Oh, you're back. Okay.
No. So what I'm trying to say is that it would have been interesting to see the relationship. What Louise would have said about her father if everything, if he had lived well and into his life, and and how would her relationship with her mother have changed if the father had been well. It's because the
Yes.
circumstances were so different and made things difficult for her. But if she had a mother and a father around, then it would be different. And so it's often circumstances as well. It's cultural, it's circumstantial, it is your social background, and so many things,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is a
yeah,
layered
that's
and
it.
complex situation in which I must say
Yeah.
that, Eleanor, thank you so much for the work that you did to the script, because the script is very layered, because it shows the complexities of being this caregiver, being responsible to another life, whether this life be it a child, but definitely someone who's depending on you, including caregiving of Linda to the husband. And that's another thread that is parallel to the mothering, caregiving and mothering coming down the same journey, because the story also has the idea of caregiving for the sick or for the ill father. And then later, it repeats itself with Linda and Louise. I just wanted to ask Eleanor, with the choice of Louise going into a home, was that something that you feel Louise would have done it herself, or is that the circumstances where the daughter decided it? What it was never a play that it was never made clear. But what are your thoughts about that?
I think that, so that was the thing, right? The conversations that take place between Linda and Louise, as you say, are all in that liminal space, because as we find out, Linda is actually not able to have those conversations, in a realistic form, because of where she is and who she is right now. That's the thing, much like, and that was also Louise coming to terms with, like, okay, yeah, I didn't want to think of myself as being like you, but like you, I have, in a sense, taken my responsibility and kind of entrusted it to somebody else, because that's not what I'm here to do. That's not what I do best, but I am doing what I am supposed to be doing. I'm visiting. I'm here for you. I'm not leaving. But at the same time, I'm not living my life, in relation to you and all things. I need to have my own life. And I think that even without being aware of that, she had to make the choice already. And so when the idea, the phenomenon of a child came into the picture, that was a choice that had to be made over and over again, because it's every time you take on a responsibility, like, how much of yourself do you put into it? How much do you sacrifice? How much of yourself do you put away so that you can fulfill somebody else's needs? And it's not to say that it's a bad thing necessarily, but if it's something that you do, it has to be something that's fully embraced and something that you do willingly. And so I think that we also, it was also that Asian hang up of like, oh, bring your kid, your mom to a home is bad. But the thing is that her mom needs care. She needs the kind of care that at the moment Louise cannot provide. And so she's doing the best. And why is that the wrong answer? Why does society see that as not the best answer? So I think that, I mean, it's not a choice that I myself have made. My mother lives with me. But I just wanted to talk about the fact that, it is a choice. We need to stop assuming that there is a correct answer for everything, and we need to give women and men the power to make choices. I guess that's the cheesy general message of this whole thing.
And caregiving is very difficult. It is a very difficult journey that, as seen, expressed by Linda, the character, who says, I was there. And then at certain moments, she realized that the giving of that is to someone who's no longer the same. And what was poignant, I felt, towards the tail end of it, Linda, in that voice, in the other world voice, the reflective voice of Linda talking about, is death similar to birth? When you're pushed so reluctantly or pushed, forcibly into a space, into another world, that is something that myself as a caregiver, I think about it. How much more of my mother is there left? As do I recognize her? Is she the same? And I'm placed in a position where I'm holding the space for her still, and how much of that is still there. But most importantly, I do appreciate that the script is asking us to question, why do people demonize those who are not able to care for their elderly or for someone who's with them, who is in need of care in their own home? Because I know many people who are either they're living alone and they're not able to care for their aged parent or parents, and they're left to resort to housing or institution for that purpose. Especially in Asian society, it's is frowned upon. And that's a very difficult situation. And that play raises the bar to ask the same thing. If you're asking the question of what it is to be a mother, you're also asking the question, who then is the caregiver? How about the caregiver? What do we care about this person? Who is this person who's giving care? What is his or her life? And I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Eleanor. Any other person's thoughts around caregiving? Because that's also very central to the play. Maybe Edith, your thoughts about that?
Well, I've already chosen my nursing home, so I mean, I think in my family it's not a taboo topic.
Yes.
I don't have a child, so I'll be sending myself off to the nursing home. But I think it's interesting because I've seen my grandmother make the transition. I helped her make the transition from her home that she lived in for a very long time, up until she had her infarction, or like a mini stroke. And it was interesting to see her, knowing that she was scared about what was going to greet her at the nursing home. But now you see her, she's the most sociable person in the world. The church is there at the nursing home. She gets to go to church every day. She gets to bet on her races. She still has her independence. She knows all of the people at the nursing home, all of the nurses. And so I think she is happy because she has a broader community, whereas when she was living alone, she had her visitors, but not the broader community. So she does have a large bunch of friends there. And I think my mum and I, like when we go and see her when I'm back in Australia, mum's always like, yeah, I'll be here too, So we both sit here and look around and go, yeah, this is a pretty nice place, and I know that's morbid, but at the same time, it's reality,
No.
So many different cultures, the Norse culture, there were times when you would send your parents up the hill to throw themselves off so that they could throw themselves off a cliff so they could meet Valhalla.
Yes.
Our ideas of caregiving have changed so rapidly over our lifetimes. And I think it's about choice. Just as Louise has a choice over her body, she also must now make the choice over her mother's body, over Linda's body. And how do we do that? Because that's what our mothers have done for our fathers, our mothers have done for us all of our lives. And then the tables turn, and then we need to make decisions about our own parents. And it feels unnatural and always too soon, I think. So that's my opinion based on my experience of my grandmother and my mother.
Anyone last thoughts about this topic? Because Pam Emily has offered us her thoughts, how the caregiver is also human, just as a mother is also a human who has their own choices, life, agency, and multidimensionality, and how often we forget that. And that's very true. Thank you very much, Pam. Any last thoughts from the creatives, the actors, about caregiving, this topic? Anyone want to add? Yes.
I think I will say
Karen.
that
Yes,
I also
please.
appreciate from Eleanor's writing that despite all of Louise's questionings and accusations against her mother, Linda never once said to her, and now you are not even giving me a choice about where I'm going to stay and how I'm going to go or whatever. I mean, we don't know whether there was some sort of agreement before that, right? Say if this happens to me, do this for me. We don't. So we are assuming that Linda just became unwell, and then this is the decisions that Louise had to make. And Louise is letting her mother live in a home so that she can live her own life, which is in many ways what her mother did. The mother let the aunt look after Louise so that she could live her life, so that she could give Louise a better life. And I think at the end of the day, as mothers, as fathers, as friends, and that kind of thing, we never question those that we love. We just don't. We just learn to accept it. And I think that's something that Louise has to learn. All the Louises in the world, male and female, we learn to have to understand what a bigger love actually is, because we've always accepted from our parents, and then when we suddenly become parents to a cat or to a dog or to a child or we adopt somebody's child, right? You know, you can marry somebody who already has their own child and you accept that child, or an elderly in-law and all that. Then suddenly your world becomes much bigger. And I think that's so much hope for that, you see, because I do believe that's what Louise goes through. Definitely. Her heart just expands. And you can say, oh, it's because of her interactions with her mother. No, in many ways, it's also herself, understanding herself and understanding that she's going to be and she's an okay person. And that's all we can hope for, really. So thank you, Eleanor. I mean, really, you did not, you didn't push it that way. You just let it all, be about magnanimity. Wow, magnanimity, generosity, compassion.
Thank you. Thank you for your generous words. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And with that, I would like to thank all of you, the audience on Facebook and YouTube, for joining us, and most importantly to Eleanor, Edith, Inge, Wan Ching, Karen, for being here tonight and for doing such a beautiful piece of work, for the Festival of Women Now 2020. From the bottom of my heart, I thank each and every one of you for your contributions. Thank you so very much. Thank you all for joining us. And for those do tell your friends, because the recording of the Book of Mothers, the audio play, still is available on SoundCloud, and you can go to the Facebook page to see that link. It's in numbers. I can't repeat them. I don't even know how it looks like, but it's got numbers. Anyway, you just go to SoundCloud and search for T-Works Singapore. That's the easiest way I can tell you. Go to SoundCloud and search for T-Works Singapore. But we also have recorded the WAVE version, the one that Ghazali Muzakir likes. And that WAVE version is stored in the YouTube and it's available starting from tomorrow. So you can also go to YouTube and listen stroke watch the Book of Mothers there. And there is Kingston from all the way from Berlin, sends his regards. And well, you can read that. It's gone so fast. Enjoyed the vintage radio atmosphere created by Inge. Saying much love from Berlin, contemporary take by all of you, because perhaps it was so immediate to you. Thank you very much, Kingston, for joining us all the way from Berlin. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. Love. because
We're doing
Karen
that. We're
wants to
doing
do
that.
it, so we all have to do it. But you see, he just doesn't want to do it. All right, then, everybody, have a good night. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye. Much love. Much love.
Thank
Bigger love.
you. Thank you
Bigger
very
love.
much.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.